Anil, thanks a lot for inviting me on your show. Just to give a short introduction, my name is Vivek Tripathi, and I have worked for about 26 years in various sectors, primarily in technology. So I worked for Adobe Systems and Cadence Design Systems towards the early part of my career. And then I worked with telecom companies. So I was with Airtel and with Lava International. Uh, I also had stints in consulting. And then, of course, I had a stint with Biba Apparels as the chief HR officer, which is retail. So I've been in technology, I've been in telecom, and I've been in retail. And I have also done consulting assignments in between with Right Management and with School of Inspired Leadership. So that's my background.
Thank you so much for accepting our invite. Always a pleasure to listen to your perspectives, Vivek. Since our topic of discussion today is executive hiring, with your years of experience, wanted to understand from you, Vivek, what are some of the key considerations you look out from candidates, specifically while hiring senior leaders, and how is it different when you move from sector to sector? Does that vary when you have to do this hiring for a startup versus already an established organization?
So Anil, I'll talk from my own experience. When it comes to startups, I would say that my stint at Adobe and at Lava, I would consider both of them to be startups, because startups more in the sense that they were all young companies. What I found is that definitely there is a difference when you look for senior leaders in startups versus, let's say, established companies. Of course, there are differences based on the sector also. But in a startup, I think you are looking for leaders who are much more hands-on, who have a builder mindset. And what I mean by that is that they're not really looking at what the job is when they are getting into it, but they are looking more at what can they do with the job. And therefore, when I was head of HR at Lava, I, along with the promoter, we were always looking for people who were builders or who wanted to build something. How did that manifest itself? It manifested itself in people who were entrepreneurial. So, we used to look for people who had tried things, and it's something which is very contextual. So you need to look for what are the kind of assignments the leaders have taken up. Sometimes you find that we used to find that a person has been in an organization for long, but has done a lot of different things. Now, for us, that was a plus point because, the guy is willing to experiment. We also used to look for setbacks that the person has had and how has he bounced back, because we knew that, there's hardly any startup where things are linear or things just, keep on happening in a smooth manner. There are setbacks, and therefore you needed leaders with that kind of resilience. Of course, we looked at a match with the values of the founder, because that was extremely important. Because if there was a fundamental disconnect between the founder and the leader, then however good the leader may be, it would not really, the chemistry would not match. So I think that was a very important consideration. And we looked for people who definitely were willing to learn rather than people who are very structured in their approach. So, because see, the point is there is a big picture, but nobody really knows how are we going to get to that big picture. And there are a lot of things you have to learn on the way. So we were looking for people with that kind of a mindset. So therefore, structure, planning, maybe are good things, but I don't think they work that well for a startup, which is wanting to grow fast. Those were some of the things, high energy, entrepreneurial ability, values fit, persistence and resilience. Those were the things that we kind of looked at. Mostly we were right, but we were also wrong sometimes. So that's what I would say about hiring for startups. These are some of the things we looked at, and some of the leaders who had those abilities were able to really come in and make a difference. I'll first talk about sectors, and then I'll talk about hiring for, let's say, a large established firm. I think sectors, yes. I think if you are hiring in technology, then one thing which definitely changes is that it's very hard for a leader in a deep technology company to get respect unless they are really passionate about technology and they've done something which they can talk about uh, in that space. So I think domain expertise, and here the domain is hard. So some domain expertise and some ability to, let's say, understand the technology trends and what they mean is extremely important in a technology industry. I mean, nobody at Adobe could get respect if they were not really understanding the domain. So I think that's different. So therefore, you can't get somebody from a very different sector who's not technical and ask him to do a leadership role. There is no role which is really just a people management role. So I think that's the difference. But I think otherwise, in other industries, you can definitely take people from adjacent industries. So like in telecom at Airtel, we took a lot of people from FMCG and they did extremely well. A lot of people came in from banking and did extremely well. There it was much easier. Uh, as far as hiring for established companies, so let me first talk about what I mean by an established company. So established more in the sense of its culture. So when the culture is kind of settled, uh, and not is still being, of course, culture is always in the making, but once the cultural aspects are reasonably well established, that's when the company is reasonably well established. Even though I was in Airtel in around 10, 12 years back, but I would still call Airtel a settled company because or an established company because yeah, it had been in existence for around 12, 14 years and was a large company and the leaders were all settled. So I think in an established company, the difference is that you've got a set of incumbent leaders and teams, and then a new person comes in. And therefore, in some ways, it is harder. It's harder because there is an insider and an outsider. You have to generate trust. While we all talk about onboarding, in a startup, I think it's easier because everybody is new. Everybody is almost of the same vintage, and the company is young, so the cultural norms are not that watertight. But in an established company, there is an inside track and there is an outside, and that makes the assimilation and really getting onto the inside track very hard. And therefore, I found that in established companies, leaders who were good in two things: one, who generated trust at a peer level and were able to, quickly establish a good connect with their manager, and who were able to generate trust with their teams. Because the teams also, if you are being hired at a very senior level, your team also has a lot of very influential people who are all insiders. So these two constituencies you need to really understand and work at very fast. And therefore, you need to have these skills, you need more. I mean, you will have your expertise, you will have a lot of other stuff, but this you need to do very well. Otherwise, you don't even know, and you are suddenly you are not in the mainstream, you are in the margin, and your assimilation just becomes very difficult. Of course, in different companies, this is some companies do a better job of assimilating. They are more open. There are more leaders who are welcoming. So all that is there. I mean, it's not the same in all companies, but as a general rule, I would say this is a distinction in a well-established company. I would even say just giving my own experience, while Lava was a very, it was very seamless. I just moved in and everybody was new. We were all excited. There was a vision. But let's say if I give my own experience in some of the other companies which were not that large, but they had been in existence for a longer period of time, I found there was a very clear set of leaders who were insiders, and then somebody coming in from outside was an outsider till he became an insider. So Anil, I mean, honestly, what I found is that the best bet is to make a good assessment at the hiring stage. So because the fact is that, of course, there are leaders who are flexible and others who may be less so. But by and large, leaders are less flexible than people lower down, because they have succeeded and they know what they have succeeded because of who they are, and therefore it's difficult for them to make a big shift. I would say that if you have understood that there are some key traits which the leader has, like he's willing to learn, his values are in sync with yours, and there is a 80% fit, and yes, he will have to make some 20% adjustments, then you can help him make that adjustment. But the adjustment has to be manageable, because it will be unfair to expect a leader to change all that has made him succeed just because you want him to. And frankly, I'll be very honest, wherever we have been against that challenge, I have found it difficult. I can recall instances where we thought the leader was very good functionally, good credentials, but culturally, if there was a big mismatch, then it was a difficult task to really change that.
What can typically go wrong as far as executive hiring is concerned in organizations, and what would be the possible impact if you go and hire a wrong leader?
Yeah, so again, I'll go back to the mistakes that on occasions I must confess that I, along with my other partners, have made. So I think one thing, Anil, is that if you hire based on credentials, when you are in doubt and you still hire because there was some pressing need, and you hire because you say, okay, this guy is, has worked in this company, it's a good company. This guy has worked, this guy is from, a great institute. When I've hired based on these kinds of considerations, then sometimes I have been completely wrong, or I have been wrong. You should not hire leaders based on credentials. So that's one. I would say that for leaders, if in doubt, don't hire, because the next question you ask, what is the impact? The impact is significant. And without getting into the name of the company, we once hired a CTO, and within 2 months, it was clear that we had made a wrong choice. And, then it was agony, because it seemed very unfair to not give him enough time. We thought maybe we are not reading it right, and let's give him more time. And then once you do that, then it took another 3 months. So it was a 6-month kind of a cycle that we went into. And as a result, companies' plans on the technology side got derailed. And when we were making that offer, we had some doubts, but we thought we don't know enough about this area. It's an area that he's going to set up, and therefore we should. So we made a wrong choice, and therefore it pushed us back by about 6 months. In fact, more, because 6 months it took for him to leave, and then it took some time for somebody else to come in. So it was a big loss.
Vivek, when you are going for executive hiring, typically what has been your experience in terms of number of steps in the entire process? What are absolutely must to do activities or must to do, hiring processes that you got to be following, specifically when it comes to executive hiring?
Anil, I think one of the companies which had a great hiring process was Adobe. And of course, they had a great hiring process for all levels, not just leaders. But typically, they started with first meeting. With the first meeting, once the recruiter had kind of just explained about the company, was always with the hiring manager.
Sure.
And it was a meeting more to give the candidate a view about where the company was and what the company was all about and what is the history of the company and what are some of the things we value. And I mean, it was not really about the role at all. It was about the company, and then we used to let the candidate wait for some time, assimilate all that. And then we used to reach out to him and say that, we had that meeting. Now this is the position. It was always, you started at a very high level. You gave information, you saw the impact of that information. Then you moved forward one step at a time. And then, of course, once it was clear that the person was interviewing for that position, then you had at least 4-5 people meet him. You had people meet him at, of course, his manager, but you had at least 3 people meet him at a peer level, and you had at least 1 person meet him who was a team member, sometimes 2. So about 4-5 people meeting the person and looking at aspects which are important, discussing it, and then moving forward. And then, some of the things I mentioned, were talked about: his domain, his culture fit, his ability to manage teams, and all of that. And then we used to, so one is, you must know what you are looking for, but you must also know how you are going to look for what you are looking for. And then you must really discuss whether you got what you were looking for and to what extent. Now, of course, there is never 100% fit, but if you should know whether the trade-offs that you are making are worth making. He'll take some time to understand the domain, though he understands it at a broad level, then it's fine. But if there is a basic mismatch in his expectation or in his values, then you would not make those kind of trade-offs. So I think it should be, I mean, it's not a tick mark activity at all. It's a very, very important activity. The best people should be involved. Even when you are selecting your interviewers, you must have the best people in your organization part of the interview team. They must have good judgment. I mean, we can all train them, but at the end of the day, they must have good judgment. They should know, they should understand people. That's what has worked for us. And even after all that, there is some chance that there could be an error. But I think if we do all that, then mostly we'll be right. Good companies have fairly rigorous process of hiring. Also, I would also say that if you hire people rigorously, you will have less opportunity of hiring people at a senior level. Of course, you may still need to hire because you're expanding and you may not have enough people inside. Because leadership hiring, even after you've done everything, still is error prone because it's hard for leaders to assimilate. It happens a lot in our country. I think it happens much lesser in some other countries. In the US, when I was with Adobe, we rarely heard anybody not joining once they had said that they will join. But yes, here it happens, and probably it has only gone up rather than coming down. I think the 2 people who can make a difference are the talent acquisition recruiter or the manager who's handling that particular assignment, or the HR head, and the hiring manager. I would only say that there are always some signals that are there when these things happen. Now, the only question is whether we are, catching it, whether we are clued onto it or we are not. One should therefore be sensitive to that. For example, when the offer is made, what is the reaction of the individual? How soon does he tell you when he will be able to join you? Is he making plans? Let's say he's relocating from some other city. Is he telling you proactively what is his plan of relocation? You have to be conscious of all these. If there is a big silence after the offer is accepted, it's not a good sign. Sure. The other part is that the hiring manager also, and especially when we are hiring leaders, I think we should be proactively reaching out. The hiring manager must be proactively reaching out. It's good to engage the what are going to be some of the, what What are some of the things he will get involved in? So I think ways should be found to engage with him. He's not home till he's home. I mean, till he's on board, he's not on board. So I think engagement by the manager and by the HR head or by the recruiter in a very meaningful way will either make the person join, or at least you will know that he's not going to join early, so that you are not caught on the wrong foot. Again, having done all that, everybody, it's a, at the end of the day, it's his will. So he may still surprise you, but the chances of that you would reduce. Culture fitment. I think at a leadership level, the culture fit is very important. Job fit, when a person comes in, frankly, Anil, he's not 100% fitting into the job. He's fitting into the job 80% or 70%. The rest he has to learn on the job. Culturally, there should be a basic fit. Now, if that is not there, it's very hard for him to really change himself.
While hiring, high touch or high tech?
Still high touch.
There are two situations here, Vivek. One, typically when you look at candidates at a senior level, you come across two categories of people. Somebody who has spent considerable years with a company and you assume that he is loyal to his job, is loyal to his company, versus somebody who frequently changed jobs. At a leadership level, if you have to pick any one, what would be your pick?
So between these two, I would say a person who has had at least a significant number of long stints where he has made a difference. If there is a very consistent pattern of leaving very quickly, then no. However, the best fit, Anil, is a person who has been in one company but has done multiple roles in that company. So those kind of people are rare, and they are really valuable. Who have, when you look at the resume on the first glance, you'll say the guy has spent a long time in one company, but you actually see he has done multiple things. That's really, really valuable.
Thank you so very much for sharing your perspective with my viewers, Vivek.